if you're someone who is like, oh no, this shouldn't be a problem, I don't understand why people are complaining. You think about a single time in your life, and hopefully for the sake of learning, this has happened to you, where someone was talking crap about you and other people were hearing it. And how did that make you feel? And now you amplify it literally by 10,000 or 100,000, because that's what happens in scenarios like this. So sometimes on the internet, there's drama. And when there's drama, we actually try really hard to steer clear of it. A big part of what we do here at Healthy Gamer is not talk about people. One of our central principles is that we think you should talk to people. And half the problem with the internet right now is that everyone opines, everyone has opinion, everyone says what other people should and shouldn't be doing. We try really hard to step away from that and actually like talk to the people who are involved to hear their experience of things. This is something that I learned to value originally when I was in India, absolutely learned to value it 10 times over as a psychiatrist, that you actually need to talk to people and listen to people about what their experience of a particular thing is. The reason that we're talking about today about non-consensual pornography, deepfakes, revenge porn, and all that kind of stuff is because there's a lot of science actually out there which very few people know. The reason that we're choosing to open our mouths today is because I think a lot of people really need to understand what impact this has. Because we've heard a lot of people say, hey, this is harmful to me. And we've also heard a lot of people say it shouldn't be, right? You didn't actually participate in it. You don't have to watch it. We hear all these kinds of statements. So I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit about the research. So the first thing is that if you look at the research on this kind of stuff, there's actually a research term called non-consensual pornography. And why do they call it that? It's because kind of like revenge porn falls under that, but it's basically what are the psychological impacts of pornography that doesn't have the consent of the people involved. So there's one study that shows that after non-consensual pornography is released, over half of the people who are involved want to kill themselves. That's crazy. So for the record, 90% of people who are in non-consensual pornography are women, 10% are men, about. And this is like a one-time thing that leads to suicidal ideation in over 50% of people. In addition to all kinds of crap around PTSD, anxiety, depression, all that stuff gets worse. But there are very few things I've seen as a psychiatrist that a single event causes someone to go from 0% suicidality all the way to suicidal ideation. And this is a common experience, right? So this happens in over 50% of people who have non-consensual pornography made about them or released about them. So the first thing is that if you're thinking, oh, this isn't that bad, actually the data suggests it is. And here's the other reason why I want y'all to really take a step back and think about this. Because when it comes to stuff like deepfakes, you can have an opinion. I can have an opinion. Research on the negative impacts of deepfakes, we're not really sure when that'll come out. We actually have a lot about non-consensual pornography, which is what's really cool is it like talks about non-consensual pornography. But the truth is you don't actually know. You have no idea what the psychological impact is like for the person who's actually the victim. We don't have really anything in the history of humanity that sort of has allowed the human brain to experience this kind of thing. So like 10,000 years ago when people were making cave art, if I wanted to draw a nudie picture about someone in the colony, like it's cave art. That, who knows what psychological impact that has? Fake pornography is completely different. So I'm going to give y'all an example of, I was trying to think about how could someone who has not been the victim of a deepfake understand what the psychological impact of a deepfake is. And so I was just trying to think about what can I do? And here's the best that I could come up with, and it's probably terrible. So imagine for a moment that you were given GHB, Rohypnol, or the date rape drug, or some kind of other dissociative or amnesia-inducing agent. So you have no recollection of it, and then you engage in a sexual act that you have no recollection of. Someone films it, and then you watch it the next day. What do you think would be the psychological impact on you if you saw yourself engaging in a sexual act that you have no memory of. Something about this example, I hope, makes you feel icky. I want to say that if you're someone who's said, oh, deepfake pornography is not a problem, when I share this, because this is the closest way that I can imagine to try to equate deepfake pornography to like an actual experience. Because this is what does it do to the human mind to see yourself having sex with someone that you never agreed to have sex with? I have no idea, and neither do you. The experts in this are actually the victims, because they're the ones whose brains are actually seeing this stuff. They're the ones who are feeling these feelings, and the research suggests it's actually pretty fucking bad. So another thing that I want to talk about is people talk about, consent. And so here's my take. I'm not an expert in legal stuff. I'm not an expert in politics. But generally speaking, it's my understanding that as human beings, we own our likeness, right? You can't take my face and plaster it on an advertisement for, peanut butter cups, right? As a human being, I own my likeness. I own my voice. I am entitled to me. No one else is entitled to me. And especially when it comes to things like streamers and stuff or celebrities, we sort of know that, right? Because people will pay for your likeness. So when we talk about something like deepfake pornography, what we are doing is stealing someone's identity. We're taking their likeness and we're saying, hey, I'm going to use it for something and you don't get a say in that. I'm pretty sure that's consistently wrong. I'm pretty sure that is aligned with our views as human beings of what is okay and not okay. And generally speaking, as a society, we say it's not okay to use someone's likeness without their consent. The next thing that I want to talk a little bit about is the responses to people who have been through kind of a deepfake. And a lot of people will say oh, you don't have to watch it, or it's not that bad, or we'll also hear this, which is it comes with the territory. And that's also something that really bothers me because frankly, it doesn't come with the territory. What comes with the territory is what you sign up for. So if there's pornographic content about you on the internet and you are an OnlyFans creator who makes pornographic content, that comes with the territory. Streaming on Twitch, being a YouTube personality, being a celebrity, that does not entitle people to make pornography about said person. This is the whole point, right? As human beings, we have free will. We get to choose what we participate in. And we don't sign ourselves up for all kinds of random crap just because we choose to do one thing. So I don't buy for a second that when you are a streamer, you are signing yourself up and you are giving people license to use your likeness for pornographic means. I just don't buy that. I think that's fundamentally foolish and wrong and is not consistent with how we behave as a society. We just don't do that. And I don't think that any amount of privilege or money or likes or fame or whatever excuses people violating your rights. Just because I'm rich, which I'm not really, but just because someone is rich does not entitle you to steal from them. I just don't think that that's fair. That's not how we work. The next thing that I want to talk a little bit about, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but it really bothers me and scares me how little compassion or empathy there is for the people who are the first set of victims here. And we'll get to what I mean by that. So when someone is telling you, hey, this hurts me, and you say it shouldn't. And a lot of times the people who are saying it shouldn't, or you deserve it, or it comes with the territory, oftentimes those are men. I don't think men are evil. I think men are fantastic human beings. And yet when I hear men predominantly say things like this, it really bothers me for a couple of reasons that maybe you haven't heard yet. The first is that when we're talking about the damage caused by deepfakes, there are absolutely victims who are people like streamers or whatever, or revenge porn, non-consensual pornography, it doesn't have to be a streamer. Those people are absolutely victims. But I'm actually worried about the people who are consuming deepfake pornography. I am concerned for their health and well-being. And I think a lot of the problems that those people face, deepfake pornography is not helping. So let me just give you all an example, okay? Let me just think out loud about this. So right now, if you're a man and you're alone, there's something really special about content creators and relationships with content creators. There's this thing called the parasocial relationship. And I think the internet has kind of stumbled into this with influencers, where we have these parts of our brain that make us feel connected to other human beings. And if we look at what makes us feel connected to another human being, it's all kinds of stuff. So one thing that makes us connected to another human being is hugging another human being. When we hug or when we cuddle after sex, we get a release of this hormone called oxytocin in our brain. And oxytocin helps form emotional bonds. Anytime oxytocin is floating around, we bond with whatever is nearby. So it's really interesting, but when a newborn is breastfeeding, the signal that triggers the release of breast milk is actually oxytocin. So this hormone facilitates mother-child bonding. It facilitates emotional bonding after sex, which, quick side note, if you're trying to be friends with benefits and you don't want to catch feelings, don't cuddle after, because that's when the oxytocin kicks in. So this is one way in which we bond. But there are other ways in which we bond that have nothing to do with physical touch. So when we see someone be genuine, when we see someone be vulnerable, when we see someone who has the ups and downs of their day, that helps us form emotional bonds with them. When someone interacts with us, we form emotional bonds with them. There's a community of people out there who are forming bonds with influencers. This is one of the outcomes of the internet. And why is it? It's because celebrities in the past didn't interact with you, right? You saw only certain slices, very curated slices of a celebrity's life. You see them in the movies, you see them on certain media interviews, but you don't get to see the day-to-day moments of the life. How do you feel connected to another human being? You feel connected when you see the day-to-day moments of their life. You see them crying, you see them happy, you see them sad, you see them bored. They resonate with you, and we start to form this bond. And what we're seeing is that parasocial relationships are damaging, not just to the streamer, but to the person on the other end. Because when I start to form this false bond with someone else, I can never get what a real bond should get me, right? That person is they're never going to listen to my vulnerabilities and shortcomings the way that I'm going to listen to theirs. There's never going to be hugging. There's never going to be cuddling. There's never going to be holding hands. There's never going to be going to dinner together. And as I sort of almost become addicted to this parasocial relationship, it becomes harder for me to engage in real life. And this becomes a vicious cycle, because the harder it is for me to become engaged in real life, and this is what we're seeing, is there are a lot of lonely men out there who are forming parasocial relationships, lonely women as well. The harder it becomes for me to engage in real life, the more dependent I become on this parasocial relationship to fit my emotional needs. And this is crushing a generation of people, because I'm getting so addicted to this zombie relationship. It's a half relationship. It's not a real relationship, but it's all I've got, and I can't give it up. I've seen parasocial relationships destroy marriages. I've seen parasocial relationships lead to inceldom. I've seen all kinds of negative impacts. And the deepfake porn makes this worse, because now what we've managed to do is check one more box in the parasocial relationship. Not only do I understand this person, I know this person, I've seen them at their highs, I've seen them at their lows, I've been there for them, they've talked to me, and now I can get some kind of sexual gratification in a sensory manner relating to this person. And I think this is going to make the parasocial relationship worse. So I'm really concerned for the people who are actually consuming this content. I'm not saying that they're good people or anything like that, but I think it's important to acknowledge that, and I'm not going to use the word victim, but I think that they are damaging themselves too. This almost feels to me like a situation of being a smoker and secondhand smoke. Sure, it's bad for the streamer involved, but it's actually damaging for the person who's doing this kind of stuff. And if you're someone who watches deepfake pornography or has these parasocial relationships, I want you to really stop and think a little bit about, what is this doing to you? What is this doing to your life? And because what I'm hearing is so much like victim blaming and like, oh, it's not their fault, they should have thick skin. Like, but think about yourself for a second. Does advocating for deepfake pornography or watching deepfake pornography, what does that do for your life? I can't imagine that because you're watching deepfake porno, your like life is full of like fun and games and things like that. What it's actually doing is like taking advantage of a very, very core psychological need, which, by the way, is why it's so fucking paywalled. Because people are desperate and they're willing to pay for it. Why are people willing to pay for it? Because it's so much more damn addicting than regular pornography. Why is it so much more damn addicting than regular pornography? Because there's all of this other psychological relationship, parasocial crap involved. So y'all need to be careful. From the person who's in the deepfake porn, this is kind of a situation where I don't know if this is a good analogy or not. Sure, so this is like people who are consuming are like the smokers. But the people who are the victims in the porn are getting the secondhand smoke from every single smoker out there. So it's like secondhand smoke isn't that bad. But when there's 10,000 people who are all blowing their secondhand smoke in your face all at once, that is devastating. That is what leads 50+% of people to suicidal ideation after unconsensual pornography is released. So this is like psychologically incredibly traumatic. And I don't think people quite realize this is something that we haven't really understood until we started working with tons of streamers, is that the human brain is not designed to deal with vitriol and hatred from like 100,000 people. That's just not what we're made for. We're made to like deal with like 150 to 300 people. And when we scale things on the level of the internet, one person watching deepfake porno may not be that bad. But when it becomes 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, all of that starts to weigh on the person involved. And this is exactly why non-consensual pornography is so bad, because this is a case of even if you're not famous, it's stuff that's being spread about you, right? And if you're someone who is like, oh no, this shouldn't be a problem, I don't understand why people are complaining. You think about a single time in your life, and hopefully for the sake of learning, this has happened to you, where someone was talking crap about you and other people were hearing it. And how did that make you feel? And now you amplify it literally by 10,000 or 100,000, because that's what happens in scenarios like this. When people dogpile a streamer, this is what the experience is like. The amount of hatred is just so high. There's one other thing that I want to talk about, which is the problem with the lack of compassion for people who are victims. So there are a lot of people out there who are saying, hey, like people signed up for this, y'all deserve it, it's not that bad. And in that moment, if you're a dude, which I'm assuming that most people who are saying this kind of stuff are dudes, and my apologies if that's not fair. In that moment, you are demonstrating a complete lack of compassion and empathy for another human being. And chances are the reason that you feel that way is because people have treated you that way, right? So if we look at people like who are like incels or like lonely coomers on the internet, like a lot of y'all honestly are struggling. We know this because these are the people in our community. They come to our community, they say, help us get better. And we do that, right? We do our level best. Our subreddit was an absolute mess for some amount of time because these people were coming in. And a lot of people were like, ban these people. We did not ban those people. Did we delete comments? Sure. Did we sometimes ban people for violating rules? Sure. But we banned people for violating rules that we had set out. It wasn't discrimination against these people. And by the way, if there's a set of rules and you come and you break those rules and you get banned, that's not censorship or discrimination. That's you broke the rules, so we're not going to let you play the game. But going back to like what really bothers me about this, or I think what we need to acknowledge is I want you to like look at where your lack of compassion is coming from. Why is it that when someone says, hey, this hurts a lot, this is what pain looks like, this is devastating for me, why is it that you can't hear what they're saying? Because chances are you have probably experienced the exact same thing that that person is experiencing. Because I would bet money that if you are an asshole towards people who are victims of non-consensual pornography, there have been times in your life where you told someone else, hey, I am really suffering. And everyone ignored you. What did people tell you, especially if you're a man? You don't deserve to suffer. What are you complaining about? It comes with the fucking territory. Because this is what we tell men who suffer. You're privileged. Right? And so what happens to us? We hear this stuff. We reach out for help. We say, hey, I'm hurting. And the world turns to us and says, screw you. You should be able to handle it. Comes with the territory. And we become so resentful that when another human being gets hurt, we take all of that resentment and we dump it on them. Hurt people, right? The world has treated us like shit, so we're going to turn around and treat other people like shit. I want you to really think about whether this applies to you or not. Because this sounds really bizarre, but y'all are the people that should actually be the most understanding of the victims in this scenario. Because you're the one who's actually been there when you've been hurting and not a single person listened. Everyone said you shouldn't be feeling pain. What the fuck are you complaining about? Y'all should be the ones at the front of the line supporting these people because you know what it's like to have the entire world against you. And when I see this level of resentment and vitriol towards people who are clearly hurting, there's really only one explanation in my mind that rises to the surface, which is that you've been there and no one was there for you. So you're so freaking resentful that you're going to pay it forward. And so I'd strongly encourage you to think a little bit about this and think about where the resentment is coming from. Why are you so willing to discount other people's experience of pain? Because that's what you were taught. And to be blunt, this is the kind of thing that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you're a dude who's lonely, has a parasocial relationship, can't find a girlfriend, has been rejected over and over and over again, what do you think is responsible for that? I know a lot of y'all want to blame feminism. And I'm not saying women are perfect, but an attitude that completely lacks compassion and is devoid of empathy is the fucking reason you can't get laid. That's the reason. Just think about it for a second. It's not because women are against you. It's because when someone else is suffering, how do you respond to that? And this is what terrifies me about the world. Like, I used to be scared of climate change and nuclear war, but honestly, it's stuff like this. This is what's going to destroy humanity. We have somehow figured out the source code of the human brain. And people who don't have your best interests at heart are capitalizing on that source code. They're taking advantage of you, right? Because like, why is everyone paying for this? It's because it's like so friggin' addictive. Why is it addictive? Because it takes normal pornography and it adds a relationship component to it. But what it's giving people is a half-life. It's like a zombie relationship. It's not real. It's damaging you and it's damaging that person. And we've got to be really careful because the rate of technological advancement, we're like playing with fire and we don't even realize it. We're like screwing our dopaminergic circuitry, like people are struggling. Suicide rates continue to climb. Men are in crisis right now. I saw a staggering study that over half of men may not be mentally ill when they kill themselves. Right? Like women don't know how to trust men. And that I don't blame them for, because here's the thing that you have to understand. If you're a man who feels judged because a woman won't give you a chance, think for a second about what must have happened in that woman's life where her brain is telling her, we cannot trust men. And this is what's really bizarre is men are becoming better and better at deception. And the better that men get at deception, the more adaptively mistrustful women will have to become. And that can go both ways too. Right? So when men become more emotionally manipulative, which is what a lot of these like manosphere, like red pill types will do, they will teach men how to become emotionally manipulative. And what does that do? As men become better emotional manipulators, and they're like training programs that you can sign up for this, what women are going to have to learn how to do is become distrustful. And that's what we see. And then a bunch of other men are out there saying, no one's ever giving me a chance. And before blaming the woman, start to understand why. And I know it sounds absolutely weird because I don't know if I'm pissing everyone off or making everyone happy. But I think we're all screwed in this. This is something that we're doing together. We're screwing ourselves. This is like smoking in secondhand smoke. The real tragedy here is like, are women victims? Absolutely. But like, we're the ones getting damaged as men too. This is not good for anyone involved. And the place that honestly I think y'all need to start is if you see another human being, a woman suffering, because I'm sort of talking about men because I think there is a gender imbalance here. If you see another human being suffering and your instinctive reaction is you shouldn't feel that way, I want you to look at my face. You shouldn't feel that way. That's what you're going to be feeling. That's resentment. Where does that come from? Why can't you be capable of compassion? And the same is true of women as well, right? If a man says, hey, I'm suffering, my life is hard. If you discount that, where is that coming from? That's also coming from resentment. I can't believe this man is complaining he's privileged. And I have been the recipient of male privilege or the disadvantages of male privilege my entire life, which is where that resentment comes from in women. Y'all, I cannot stress this enough. We are screwed unless someone starts being nice to someone who doesn't deserve it. We're going to keep going down this road, and boy, are we fucked. Things are going to get worse. Mass shootings will continue. Sexual violence will continue. At some point, we're going to see a female mass shooter. Mark my words. That's a divide that we're getting closer and closer to crossing. We need to help each other. We need to support each other. Because anytime I look outside, I don't see that one group of people is like, yay, my life is so easy. Everybody's getting crushed. And the only way that we get through this is if we work together. Check your impulse before you tweet at someone who you think is a POS. Right? No snowflake thinks it's responsible for the avalanche. And if you are someone who thinks that the world is going to hell, if you're a man who thinks that feminism has destroyed the world, or you're a woman who thinks that all men are evil, this is what's really bizarre. You are a piece of that equation. Right? There are men out there who are hurting right now that as a woman, you can demonstrate some amount of compassion. As a man, if some woman demonstrates compassion and you catch feelings for her, that is not an excuse to violate her boundaries. We both have, this is not going to work unless it's an all hands on deck kind of thing. So I encourage each and every one of you to really think about your reactions. And in my mind, it is unequivocally wrong to engage in deepfake pornography. Right? This is the data is clear that it's quite damaging.